Well, we have a completely changing demographic at the moment. In the next 20 years, according to Age UK, there are going to be double the number of people over the age of 85 than there are now. And in the next 30 years, that number will almost treble. So that's the age group that I'm in. If I live to over the age of 85, there are going to be nearly 3 times as many of us as there are now. You can already see what that looks like in places like Christchurch, Eastbourne, Sidmouth in East Devon. So if you want to know what Britain's going to look like in 20 or 30 years' time, go to those seaside resorts, and already the demographic is very similar. Well, there's a danger that there's going to be a polarisation and that younger generations will actually look with a degree of envy at older generations, some of whom are in receipt of quite lucrative occupational pensions. The grey vote will be quite powerful, and all of these things could fuel a sort of polarisation where people say, you know, it was all right for you, but what about us? We have to go on working and working and working. And I think that that would be really detrimental to a harmonious society. So I think it's really important for churches and communities to broker good relations. So let's have more intergenerational projects. Let's have more oral history projects where young people interview older people about their memories, so that there's a real understanding of the kind of lives that people in their 80s, 90s and older have lived through, so that younger people see them not as an amorphous block of people, but a combination or a rich tapestry, if you like, of people with all sorts of different life experience. I think it's a real advantage that churches have a mixed demographic. So you will have children's group, youth work, you'll have older people. The average age of a Church of England congregation is 68, and I think the Methodist Church average age is even older than that. I've worshipped for most of my life in country churches, and if you were 68, you were considered quite young. So I think there is a lot that the church already does that's very good about mixing up the age groups, but we could do even more of that. And I think we could spearhead all sorts of community action, things like Messy Church, lunch clubs, tea at 3, the sorts of groups where older people gather because they may be lonely, where younger people can serve, people can be volunteers, children and schools can come in for specific projects that feed into their curriculum. There are all sorts of opportunity to mix up the generations, and as soon as somebody actually knows the story of an older person, they're no longer a kind of symbol of something that's out of date. They're somebody to get to know and to love and to appreciate. Just to give you an example, in Alton, I contacted the local sixth form further education college, and some students from the photography department who were doing their photography A-level came and spent a whole term coming every Tuesday afternoon to the Hard of Hearing Club. And it was really lovely to see friendships blossoming between young people who may have very little or no contact with grandparent type figures, but who really enjoyed sitting down and also taking very affectionate fly-on-the-wall portraits of people in their older years, whose lives are etched on their faces. Every wrinkle tells a story, if you like. Yes, at a time when the state is actually retrenching from a lot of social activities, social care, churches are needing to pick up the slack more and more. There's a community in Cranley in Surrey, for example, which has a website which signposts all the different activities that are happening locally. What they're obviously doing is fostering good relationships between different aspects of the community and bringing them together. Busbridge and Hambledon in Surrey is another example of a very go-ahead church that's had statutory partnerships, if you like, with local authorities to deliver certain services. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that kind of mixed economy as the years roll by. Well, I'd like to see lots more link visiting schemes for a start, but I'd also like to see a lot of Anna Chaplins. I have a dream, really, a vision, that there'll be an Anna Chaplin in every single reasonable sized community across the land, and that organisations like link visiting schemes and Anna Chaplins we'll have a synergy, that there'll be an overlap between their work, that they'll know what each other's doing, and that first and foremost it'll be about serving the community. Sharing the gospel, if you like, will come in the wake of that. It'll be a wonderful bonus and a wonderful dividend, but our first concern should be to serve people where there is need.